This episode is going to be a little bit different, and it comes from an episode of the Piers Morgan Uncensored show, where Piers has on a Palestinian supporter, Loki, and a supporter of Israel, Brigitte Gabriel. In a video I did recently, I talked about Palestinians dissembling and lying and taking no responsibility at all. I will link that video at the end of this video. Here you will see a clear demonstration of just how Palestinians and their supporters behave. We start with discussions between Piers Morgan and Loki on the issue of October the 7th.
Been the case is that the Israeli military unfortunately implemented the Hannibal Directive on October 7th. And that, just so viewers are aware, is when Israel, of course, it was initially developed in Lebanon while trying to suppress the Lebanese population and stop them from battling the Israeli occupation. And it's whereby Israel takes measures to kill the captives who are Israeli that have been taken by the other side. Now that happened on October 7th, and it's since been proven in 3 different cases. It happened, unfortunately, after...
It's been denied by Israel, to be clear.
It hasn't, though. It's been denied by certain upper echelons of the Israeli political establishment, but there have been key figures within the Air Force that have acknowledged that this has taken place. It's also been revealed by the Al Jazeera investigation, and other places too have gone very deep into it.
But you wouldn't say that the absolute vast majority of people killed and wounded on October the 7th were indeed killed and wounded by Hamas, because apart from anything else, Hamas were boasting about it and filming it as they were doing it.
I think actually the majority of people that were killed on October 7th and off the back of the October 7th were the Palestinian fighters that entered into what is considered to be Israel.
But
Here we get one of the Palestinian talking points from Palestinian sympathiser Loki. It really wasn't Hamas that did the killing. Many of the Israelis murdered were killed by, wait for it, the Israeli Defense Force. This is so delusional that you will no doubt see this as some kind of far-out, non-representative view. I can assure you that that is not the case. This is pretty mainstream with Palestinians. This continues.
no, it's not true that hundreds of people in those named casualty numbers on the Israeli side
were killed by Israel. No, it's a fact. It's a documented fact. It's a documented fact. And you know what else? If you were to study those cars which were put forth as evidence that Hamas had killed those people fleeing the Nova Festival, the order came directly from the Israeli Air Force. This is a mass Hannibal. This is a dead zone. No cars will pass.
Did you watch the documentary?
Those cars
Did you watch the
were hit by
documentary
Apache.
last week on BBC Two?
No.
About the music festival, right? You literally see Hamas fighters with their GoPros going from car to car, murdering people.
That happened. Yeah, that happened.
Why are you trying to diminish the scale of what was going on?
I've just said that happened. That doesn't equate to diminishing what you've just
stated. It doesn't
stated.
say hundreds
You're
of
diminishing Apache helicopters bombing cars that contained civilians. You're diminishing all of the Israeli captives that have been killed by Israeli airstrikes. Israeli captives have come out of Gaza and said very clearly that actually they were scared of being killed by Israeli airstrikes.
Loki claims that hundreds of the Israeli civilians were killed by the Israeli Defense Force. Now, if you enjoy this sort of content, please like, share and subscribe. And then we get on to the situation of the hostages.
Should they hand them back?
I think if you look historically at where the return of actual hostages has happened, you look at the case of Gilad Shalit, this was a case where an Israeli soldier was given back in exchange for the release of Palestinian prisoners. What you've actually seen in this case is a massive increase of Palestinian prisoners who are being tortured. There's been examples of rape within Israeli military camps. The rapists have come out and become celebrities within Israeli society. 68% of the Israeli population say they oppose the prosecuting of people that have been implicated in rape within the dungeon system. And if you really look at it, Israel has far more chance of returning hostages by negotiating for their release than by airstriking them.
But
what Israel has done as part of this campaign is airstrike and kill its own captives, the captives.
How would you have responded on October the 8th if you were running the Israeli government?
Ultimately,
the biggest terror attack on your people ever.
Ultimately, it is within the interests of everybody, especially those who identify as Israelis currently, to end Zionism.
Once again, no responsibility is taken. No acceptance of the fact that there would have been none of this, no airstrikes or anything, if October the 7th had not happened. Loki thinks it's okay for Hamas or other Arab groups to attack Israel. That, in his mind, is fully justified. But in terms of how he thinks Israel should have responded to October 7th, the answer is for the Israelis to end Zionism. This is the level of delusion with the Palestinian cause. Loki is then asked whether what Hamas did is terrorism.
Israel.
Was what Hamas did on October the 7th an act of terrorism then?
I would say that the killing by the Israeli Air Force of Israeli citizens was an act of terror. I would say that Palestinians who have lived in camps for several generations, they're not in our shoes. They're not living the kind of lives that we live in the places
but you haven't answered my question.
But I'm answering your question. To a Palestinian who has suffered their entire life under the boot of Israeli occupation, what you view as justified will not be what they view as justified.
No, I asked you what you think.
The very same way,
I asked you what you think.
very same way that you denounce figures and define them depending to these particular legislatory definitions. Throughout history, the very same people.
I understand.
You compared yourself to Nelson Mandela.
I understand.
The ANC were absolutely treated in exactly the
British
same
government
way.
called them terrorists.
FLN were treated in exactly the same way. The Vietnamese were treated in exactly the same way.
Okay.
I'm speaking directly to your point.
You're not,
in fact,
you're not answering my question.
Once again, complete dissembling, no response on whether it was terrorism. He continues with his nonsense and whataboutism. Again, with not answering the question, just constant deflection. And Piers Morgan tries yet again.
But I simply asked you, given that you categorise what Israel did to Hezbollah with the pages, whether you said it was an act of terror, whether you think what Hamas did to Israelis on October 7th was an act of terror.
As I said to you then, the picture is not clear of what exactly Hamas did to Israelis. There were lies about 40 beheaded babies that were pumped out all over the place.
Yeah.
No. There was so much fake news and lies on what happened on October 7th. How can we actually say...
Have you watched the Hamas footage that they took themselves?
Seen bits and pieces.
Bits and pieces?
Yeah.
Literally bits and pieces of people's bodies?
No.
No?
What
Really?
I don't understand...
You haven't seen it,
What
have
I
you?
don't understand...
Why don't you want to see it?
I'm happy to see it, but what I don't understand... No, as in I would like to see these...
Once again, complete dissembling, no response on whether it was terrorism. He continues with his nonsense and whataboutism. Again, with not answering the question, just constant deflection. And Piers Morgan tries yet again.
Let's be clear.
But I only asked you one comparison.
Something...
You view what Israel did to Hezbollah, who've been firing rockets at them all year, displacing 70,000 people in northern Israel. You view what they did with those pages as an act of terrorism. I simply said to you, do you think what Hamas did on October 7th is an act of terrorism? And you've been really struggling to give a straight answer. You're trying to distract me by saying Hannibal directive, hundreds were killed.
Let me ask you a question. Do you believe in the provisions of the Genocide Convention?
I do not believe what Israel's doing is waging genocide.
That's not...
And yet again, there is Loki with a complete dodge of the question. As I said, as shocking as it may be to realise, this is what the Palestinians are like. I've met with many of them, up to and including Mustafa Barghouti, one of the absolute most senior Palestinians, and it is the same right through their society. Then we have Lebanese American Brigitte Gabriel laying out the truth on the issue. No dissembling here.
What Loki has to say. He's not alone in this thought. I've heard this from many pro-Palestinian guests on Uncensored in the last year. What is your response?
Well, I want to start with the accusation of the occupation. Israel was minding its own business ever since it existed. It reached out to the Arabic world. It wanted to have peace with the Arabic world. In 1964, when the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, was founded, the West Bank was in the hands of Jordan. It was Jordan. And Gaza was in the hands of Egypt. It was Egypt. So the PLO was founded in 1964, not because of any occupation. They wanted to drive the Jews into the sea and get rid of every single Jew in the Middle East. Israel tried repeating. The only reason the Palestinians lost in 67 and they lost Gaza and the West Bank is because they preempted an attack against Israel. And over again, Israel reached out to them to make peace with them. In 2000, Ehud Barak offered them 97% of the territories back, and they refused it again and again and again. In 2005, when Israel withdrew out of Gaza, they said, okay, we're going to give you your own state, we're going to give you your own territory. Israel forcibly removed its own people fighting the IDF by force, removed them out of Gaza. Not only to remove the people, they dug out dead Jews' bones from the cemeteries because they knew exactly what the Palestinians are going to do to the cemeteries. So in 2005, when Israel withdrew out of Gaza, there wasn't one Jew alive or dead in Gaza. They turned over the key to them and said, okay, great, now build your own place, you are independent. I know people that Israel even left them the greenhouses. Israel was exporting 50 million flowers to Europe in 2004 out of Gaza. The greenhouses, the fruits, the vegetables, the flowers. They left them to the Palestinians so the Palestinians can start they can have an industry where they can support themselves. I know a businessman from New York who even raised $14 million to make sure the Palestinians will be able to get paid salaries as they move over and they continue building the greenhouses. And what did the Palestinians do within 24 hours after Israel withdrew? Not only they destroyed every single Jewish synagogue in the area, they destroyed the greenhouses, ripped out the pipe, and even stole the copper out of the pipe. And then they had an election. So in their first election, the first woman elected to the cabinet of Hamas was a woman by the name Nidal, the mother of al-Mukawama, they called her, the mother of the resistance. And she ran on the platform, I killed 3 of my sons, because she had videos of her sons, she dressing them in suicide bombers to go kill Israelis. She said, I already gave up 3 for the cause. I have another 7 to give. That's why she was elected. So that's a democratic election for Hamas. Israel did not put the Palestinians in a prison in Gaza. Hamas put the Palestinians in a prison in Gaza. Gaza could have been turned into Singapore. They had the money. They had more money pouring into the Palestinian territories and still do from all over the world. And what did they do with it? Build a tunnel infrastructure underneath bigger than the subway system in New York.
Gabriel does an excellent job of giving the history of the region. The PLO was created before the West Bank and Gaza existed as separate entities. In fact, they were parts of Jordan and Egypt, respectively. Hamas was completely destructive and had no interest whatsoever in building Gaza up as a nation. And as I said, Palestinians love their children, but in a very different way to what we do in the West. Piers Morgan gets the issue of whether Gaza was occupied or not completely wrong.
When it comes to this issue of occupation, I was very struck at the start of the response to October the 7th that very quickly Israel was able to turn on or off the tap of energy, the tap of water, the food supply, etc. That is only achievable if you are effectively occupying another country. Otherwise, you're not able to do it. So Israel has had this control over Gaza and the people that live there, which to me does not afford those people the same human rights as Israelis enjoy. It's inarguable because
the reason that Israel could turn off the water and electricity has nothing whatsoever to do with whether Israel is occupying Gaza or not. It completely has to do with the fact that Hamas and the Palestinians in Gaza did nothing whatsoever about building a service infrastructure. They were happy to be utterly reliant on Israel. As far as occupying Gaza is concerned, think about the stupidity of the argument. Malaysia could turn off the water supply to Singapore. Would that make Malaysia occupiers of Singapore? Many European countries could turn off electricity to other countries, particularly those that are stupidly and overly reliant on essentially unreliable renewables. So, do these countries supplying the electricity occupy the countries that they supply electricity to? Did Russia occupy Germany because they could turn off the gas supply to Germany? This is a ridiculous argument. Then Morgan asks Gabriel about the expansion of the settlements.
be happening. Why is it happening?
Sorry, you cut out. You mean the settlements in the West Bank?
Yeah, the expansion of
Did I hear
settlements on the
correctly?
West Bank in the last year has been completely outrageous.
Well, look, there's a radical wing within Israel that wants to expand the settlements, and the settlements is an issue. I agree
You're
with you.
funded
There
by
are a
the
lot
same
of people
people.
who are very upset about
You're
the
funded by
settlements.
the same organizations.
What does this have to do with the funding with what we're talking about? They are Americans who support the funding of protecting the United States, not Israel. Our work is devoted to protecting
We have
the
the
United
documents.
States. Has
We have
nothing
the
to
documents.
do.
They
Let's
fund
get
settlements and
back,
they fund
please.
let's
jihad.
get back to the bigger
Oh,
picture.
please.
So, Bridget, do you condemn the expansion of the settlements in the last year on the West Bank?
Say that again?
Do you condemn the expansion of the settlements on the West Bank in the past year?
Yes, I do. I think they are going overboard with the settlement.
Okay, good.
I think somebody needs to revisit looking at the settlement and how they
Okay,
are
good.
expanding.
Then that's good. Loki, do you condemn what Hamas did on October the 7th?
I have a question for you.
Well, hang on.
Based on
You
what
stop
you just
asking
said about
questions for a
settlements.
minute.
I'll answer your question in a
Okay,
second. I'll
she's
answer your
made an
question in a
admission
second.
that she condemns it.
No,
You-
she condemns the expansion
Loki,
of settlements.
fine. Loki.
And these people also fund
Loki.
her.
At some point, you are going to... Loki, you are going to answer some of my questions.
Which I have done.
Okay, do you condemn what Hamas did?
You've already asked me that.
Not directly, you haven't answered.
I will not condemn people based on Israeli military talking points.
Okay, good.
But
Gabriel quite forthrightly condemns the expansion of the settlements. Direct question, direct answer, which is typical of how the Israelis and the Jews go about things, even though Gabriel herself is not Jewish. Loki is asked again if he condemns Hamas's actions on October 7. And yet again, there is a whole lot of dissembling. Morgan tries again on Hamas's murder.
you won't condemn his funding of
Mate, you
Netanyahu,
don't
and
condemn mass murder.
You don't condemn mass murder.
Oh, I do.
Condemn the Israeli military for mass murdering Israeli captives.
Had you bothered to watch this program for the last year, you would see I've regularly condemned them.
It's not condemnation.
No,
It's
but
not-
you
it's
don't
not
think that
this.
what Hamas
It's
did
not
was
this.
murder, do you? You think it's resistance?
I think the vast majority of humanity perceive asymmetrical warfare by developed militaries against the vast majority.
Once again, more dissembling. You're getting irritated with how Loki seems congenitally unable to give a straight answer to a straight question. As I've said previously, the shocking thing is this situation is normal for the Palestinians. Imagine how the Israelis feel trying to negotiate in any way, shape or form with them. And Morgan tries yet again.
All right. But at some point, you've got to have a little bit of something about you that says that some things that people do to Israel can also be wrong. You don't think so?
I mean, you're misrepresenting my
Am I?
point of view. Yeah.
Can you think of one thing people have done to Israel that's wrong?
I think giving it $8.7 billion in military aid after it's carried out a terrorist attack.
So no attack on Israel has ever been anything but justified.
I think Zionism as a project is unsustainable.
That's not my question.
It's unsustainable.
Can you think of one
It's
thing?
unsustainable.
Is there one thing that's been done to Israel that you think is wrong?
Not right now. I
Okay.
can't think of that.
And that's,
I'll let you know.
in its way, Loki, that's very illuminating.
Once again, Loki goes about dissembling, not wanting to answer the question. But we finally do get one actual answer from Loki that simply demonstrates what he in particular and Palestinians in general think. They hate Israel and Jews and think that whatever bad happens to Israel, no matter what, is fine. The Jews brought it on themselves. What do you think of the way that Loki and Brigitte Gabriel responded and their views? Please let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching.